Good afternoon. It is, I always have to look this up, Thursday, the 7th of May. I'm delighted to be joined by Damiano Polcaro. I hope I've pronounced that. I speak very minor, probably about half a dozen words of Italian, and it's usually things like, I was going to go into Spanish then. I'm in Spanish mode because we're off to Spain on Monday. So I know hello. I was going to say buenos dias. Anyway, very little. Let's just suffice to say that I know very
Yeah.
little.
Well, you pronounce my name perfectly. So.
Oh, good, good, good. And we're here to talk about you and your writing. So this is your spotlight. And we always start at the beginning, whether you remember what you first remember writing, and whether it had any impact, whether you enjoyed it, and you clearly do because you're now an author. But can you remember how far back you went?
I can actually. And it was in fact actually watching one of your previous author
Okay.
spotlights that actually triggered this memory because um, the first thing that I genuinely remember writing was a story in primary school about a mischievous monster.
Oh,
Um, and the reason why we had that particular project is because we were to write them and they were going to be bound and they were going to be presented to a visiting author. Now, I can't remember the author's name, which is annoying, but I do still have, or I say I have, my parents still have
mm,
that story that I wrote because it was bound. And I remember a few years ago coming across it and going, oh yeah, look at this. Um, and the author wrote a message inside, um, which was it was encouraging, obviously, like kind of keep up the writing.
oh,
And so I really want to find that, go to my parents and find that book again and
mm.
find the author just so I can reach out and say I actually have all these years
Yes,
later.
get
But yeah,
get in touch because I'm sure he or she would love to know that you still have that and what an impact it made on you. Oh,
yeah, it's like, but like I said, had completely gone from my mind
mm,
until very recently when I knew I was going to be talking to you and
mm.
the first piece of writing that you remember is like, oh my goodness, yeah, I do, I
Oh,
remember.
I
Yeah.
love the idea of the mischievous monster. And presumably this is off script bit, and I knew we'd go off at tangents. Would you consider writing for children?
I would, I think, well, in fact, absolutely, I would. I mean, my background's always been in the creative industries and always kept like kind of little um sketchbooks and notepads.
Mm,
One of those notepads actually was a series of creatures that I
right,
made up, that I always thought would kind of make an interesting story at some point or another.
right.
And beyond, I mean, my books that I've written are very much for adults. When we, I mean, just the title of the first one
Mm,
kind of
yes.
indicates it, and the language and everything in it, and the content is very much for adults.
Yeah.
But uh, some of the other writing I do has been script writing or screenwriting,
Mm,
and for a particular project that fingers crossed will kind of get off the ground soon.
mm.
That is targeted well from children all the way up to adults, but maybe
Okay.
from the teenage years. But yeah, I would definitely consider. I used to like part of the fun of having children was being able to read all of the brilliant books. And also the excuse to carry on buying more books and different types of books to then read them.
Yes.
And they're so much
Yeah.
fun.
We are grown up children, aren't we?
We are,
As
yeah, we
well.
are essentially. Yeah.
And especially, I mean, it's really fun. I find really fun, and I haven't yet spoken to an author who says no, I don't enjoy writing. I have. Used to interview authors on my blog, just 2D. So I would send them out a load of questions. They would fill in the answers. I'd then get them back and fill in and add bits as if we were chatting naturally, but it was all on paper on the screen. Um, and of those 700 and something authors over the however long it was, 5 years, um, I think I've only had probably 4 or 5 who've come to me saying, please pull the interview because I don't write anymore. I had
Oh,
one quite recently, and he said that I'd never really planned on being an author. I did this one book. I enjoyed it, but it was a bit of a traumatic. I think he had a really terrible publisher, and it just left a bad taste. And because it had his name on it, people were then finding my interview because they were googling his name. And he said then it leads to awkward questions. Why haven't I written anything else? And so I gladly pulled it. I think it's a shame when anybody stops doing it, but I think it is very much a labor of love. We know how hard it is. I mean, you're in marketing, so we will come to marketing. But we all know how difficult it is to get our work out there. So do you, obviously you work from home or predominantly from home, are you pretty good at setting aside saying, right, I'm going to write from this to that, or I'm going to write a certain amount of words, or you find you have a gap in your work schedule and that's when you write?
So I'm actually quite disciplined, but in so when I was writing the novels, so at the moment um I'm in between writing. So
Right.
I'm because I'm promoting the launch of my second book. But
Mm.
when I was writing, I had a target of at least between 1,000 and 1,500 words a day.
That's
But
that's pretty good.
for the period, yeah, in which I
Yeah.
was writing to get it finished. But I the way I write and the way I do any creative, being sat down and like I am right now and
Mm.
being in front of a laptop is probably the hardest part of my day. Anyone who knows me and I've worked with and run creative studios like this, I'm always walking. I'm always wandering about. And my creativity and a lot of the meetings and creative workshops and meetings and stuff that we would have would be outside of computers because
Mm.
computers are just a tool and all the creativity is up here. Um, and so it would generally be in environments where we could walk around. Now I have a weird way of writing in the sense that I would go out for walks and I would write in my head if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I would play out scenes. I would play out dialogue um, in my head. And so when it came to actually then sitting down and writing,
Mm.
I kind of knew what I was doing, and I would just type it out because I'd already thought it through. And I would take time out, and I take time out anyway from if I'm working on the creative project, it's the time spent on my computer is the doing time of actually putting it together, whether that's a presentation for someone or like pitching a work or actually creating the artwork itself or whatever. But like the thinking time is always spent um, outside. So I've always kind of had the kind of that kind of discipline of knowing when I have to sit down and do the doing, as it were.
Yeah. Have you got a good memory? Because I have a terrible memory. So I always either have my phone or have a notebook and a pen with me. Are you pretty good at when you're out and thinking of these ideas of them staying there? Have you ever lost anything you thought, oh, I knew I came up with a brilliant idea, but I can't remember what it was?
No, I tend to remember them. The reason being is because if I have an idea and if I'm starting to play stuff through, I would repeat it.
Right.
So it kind of repeats in my mind, and so and even if I don't have like I can work out some dialogue, but even if I don't remember it or remember it specifically, I remember the feeling of it. I remember what I'm trying to put across.
Yeah.
Um, so I will have that. I mean, the reason so my first book, Bastard, the reason how that came about, that was something that happened just before I was going to sleep. I
Mm.
had this idea, and as I went off to sleep, I had this idea, and I thought, oh, when I woke up the next day, I'd still remembered it, and I
Got
thought,
it.
actually,
Oh, good.
this sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um, I've often thought whether I should um have I could like record. into my phone. But
Mm.
because I edit as I go along, so even when I'm writing, so I'm editing in my head and I'm
Mm.
replaying and changing conversations, changing words in it. And when it comes to writing it out, I write out and then reread and edit as I go along. And I think that's a lot harder to do if you're just recording it because it starts to
Yeah,
get. I mean, I
yeah,
know myself because part of what I do is again from the creative side is directing video shoots,
right.
and often say if we were like we're doing now, if we're recording someone and we're interviewing someone for a
Mm.
video that they're doing, the number of takes that you have to do just to get what you actually get the correct one. It would be the
Yeah,
same, I guess, as like I'd be talking, I'd be going, oh, hang on a minute. No, it's going to be like this, and no, it's going to be like
right.
this. And actually, it becomes a lot harder than just to then think, well, now I have to put that
Yeah.
onto
Well,
computer.
I have a an iPhone and it has a notes app. So I dictate into that, but it's coming up on the screen. So I can then go back and think, oh, did I include that? And so on. But my walks are fairly short because it's just the dog around the pocket park. But he is a typical boy. He'll stop, sniff. So a 10 minute, 5 minute walk is usually 10 or 15 minutes. Um, but yes, I know I've come up with brilliant idea, what I think are brilliant ideas in the past, and I've had nothing on me to record it, and I've lost it by the time occasionally they've come back to me, but I learned my lesson by losing some things that I wish
Yeah.
I'd jotted down. When,
There's a really lovely book, a really short book by John Cleese,
right,
the comedian about
yeah,
creativity,
yeah,
and he talks about the his subconscious mind, um, how often that comes up with the best ideas,
mm,
um, and again, like he specifically talks about a time they were writing a sketch for Monty Python,
mm,
um, and they lost all the work. They lost where he couldn't find it. They lost it all. Um, and but he would go to sleep, and he said his mind would just it obviously is like kind of figuring stuff out while he slept because then he'd wake up the next day and suddenly know what he would have to do, and even if it wasn't exactly the same, it would be better.
right. It's
And
almost like it was in there and his brain was editing it to
yes,
perfect it and then get it back. Because some writers do stop mid-sentence, and then it's almost as if their brain carries on going when they go to bed, and then they carry on the sentence. They don't want to finish a sentence or a chapter or a paragraph, whatever. They just leave it open so that their brain can then carry on going in between. So when you finished your first book, who sees it first?
so my wife Louise, she sees it first. In fact, so not only did she see it first, I was as I was writing at the end of each week, I would have between 7 and 10,000 words. Louise was reading it as it went along. Initially, it started out as a bit of a almost a bit of a comfort blanket for me
Right.
because it was like I had this idea. I've got this idea for a novel.
Mm.
Can you just check that there's something
Yes.
there that it's working? So she read, yeah, and really enjoyed it. Um,
Good.
and so that process just continued. Now,
Mm.
um, the advantage of Louise reading it is that her background is in editing,
Ah,
much
that's
like your own,
okay.
but not specifically editing books. So she started in magazine editing, and back
Mm.
way back when 20 odd years ago, that's how we met. Um, and and now she's a director of communications. But but her background is still very much in the written word and editing.
Mm.
So she would go along and edit as she went along as well and ask me questions and making sure that she wasn't changing the meaning or of anything.
Sure.
But yeah, so and that process continued through my second book as well. So and I imagine that's the process we're going to be using, um, whether she likes it or not now.
Well, no,
Like,
absolutely. The thing is, if she enjoyed it and
yeah,
she's got a critical eye, then it's perfect, perfect person to.
yeah. And as
And
much
she
as I
knows,
know,
you can handle it. And when she
yeah.
says, "Well, this doesn't work," or "You need to do this," and
Yeah,
That,
she would absolutely be honest with me. If
yeah.
she had said, I don't think this is good,
Mm,
as much as it would have been, oh, okay, I would have accepted it, and she would have told me as well. So
yeah,
yeah, I wasn't worried about her just humoring me, as it were.
sure. Yeah. Well, really, there's a market for everybody, for everything. I used to go on a Tuesday evening when I lived in Northampton to Starbucks and with some of my students. I was teaching creative writing, and we'd meet up sort of anywhere between 4 and 6 of us on a Tuesday evening. And we'd just start off by saying, "What are you writing?" And most of us were working on novels or our short stories and just carrying on. And one evening, at the time, the only published student, he said, "Oh, I'm going to write some bad poetry." And we laughed and said, "What, intentionally bad?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "The best-selling author for the publisher who publishes my children's books, writes terrible poetry. And sorry, America, anybody American watching this, um, but America loves it. So I'm going to have a go at writing some bad poetry." And a lot of writers say that Dan Brown, and I'm not knocking your writing at all, but Dan Brown and J.K. Rowling aren't good writers, but they tell a good story. And really, there is everybody, unless a book is really terrible, um, then everybody likes, there is a market for every kind of book. And so I think even if she'd said, "That's not a very good book," if you were telling a good story, or there was the bones of a story that she could have helped you develop. But wonderful that you didn't need as much work as potentially a debut author would have needed. But then you've your professional life is working with words.
Yes, yeah. So it's working with words, working with
Yeah.
imagery. So I mean, as my background, I went to university to study the creative arts and design, and as much as it was kind of more visual led, so I'm a graphic designer by trade. It was more ideas led, and over the years, words became much more important to me, or like I enjoyed working with words more so than not more so than the visuals, but I appreciated them a lot more. So, and I mean, obviously, when it comes to advertising or trying to market something, they have to work well together.
Mm,
And coming up with coming up with a line, even coming up with the story behind why you're doing something,
mm,
uh, that was really enjoyable. And then um, on the side from doing the creative projects and working on campaigns, I was script writing or screenwriting with my creative partner, who um, my writing partner in this sense, who didn't write the books with me, but we screenwrite together, and we've been doing that for a few years, and we'll be doing that in the evenings outside of our working day,
mm.
um, and it's just incredibly good fun. But yeah, so I wasn't a novice to
No.
writing or to what makes
Yes.
effective
Sure.
communications.
Sure. I mean, with your advertising, obviously you've only got a certain amount of words that, and they've all got to work. Every single word has got to work in an advert. Um, do you think that, and obviously marketing alongside that, do you find that, and when you're script writing, this is sort of 2 or 3 part question in one, with your script writing, obviously the bulk of it is dialogue. Do you think that your advertising background and your script writing background has made you a better writer because you're now thinking of your word choice and the dialogue pops with your characters because of your background, do you think?
Yes, yeah, I would absolutely say that. I think with with marketing and advertising, you're trying to get people to purchase, whether it's a service or product, or change behavior. Um, but you only have an instant in which to grab them, and so you have to choose your words very carefully, and they have to be impactful. So there's that element to it. With script writing, like you said, it's predominantly dialogue. You are describing, or it's a very different way of writing, but it is tends to be dialogue heavy, but then you're describing a scene or what's happening physically within that scene, but
Mm.
then it's led by the dialogue. So with my books are quite dialogue heavy.
Right.
Now, and there's not unusual in that, but then the authors who I really enjoy reading, which who tend to sit outside of the genre that I actually write in, but people like Joe Abercrombie in the fantasy world, and Scott Lynch as well, their dialogue is wonderful. Like, and even Sebastian de Castell, it's like the dialogue that kind of that drives it.
Mm.
Um, Now, and that's what draws me in as a reader. That's what I enjoy most.
Me too.
So if you can tell a story with dialogue and
Yeah.
without having to be overly descriptive, then that works. And it's a bit like, I know, I mean, Lord of the Rings, I love the films, and I love the films more than I ever enjoyed the books, because they stripped out a lot of, because you don't have to describe it all, because you can see it visually. And
Exactly.
there's a lot of kind of scene setting and everything in the books, and you kind of like, oh, I just want something to happen. um and so that kind of like follows through.
Yeah, no, exactly. I have a friend. I'm very pro dialogue, and when I'm going through a book, mine or somebody else's, um, I'll say that recommend certainly no less than 50% dialogue, and description is the narrator telling us what we're looking at effectively. Whereas the dialogue are the characters, and really a book is about characters. A film is about characters. Yes, it's pretty scenery and so on. But I have a poet friend who, if she turns the page and it's all description, she gets her cup of tea, she settles back, and she reads every word, and she enjoys her surroundings in the book. Whereas with me, if I turn the page and there's description, it's kind of okay, next.
Yeah,
Because
I'm
I want
exactly
to
the
get
same. Yeah.
back. Yes, I want to get back to the characters.
And in fact, with Bastard, because it's told by the narrator, there he has, I keep the dialogue going, whether it's in his, he has a lot of inner monologue
Mm,
that he goes through, and part of the fun of his character is what he's saying to himself versus what he's saying
right.
to the people he's interacting with,
Yes.
um, as well. So
That could be fun as a reader, because we loved in two respects. We love to know something the narrator doesn't, or the characters don't know. If we find out something in a mystery, we find out something before they discover something. But equally, if we learn something from the characters, the main characters' point of view, that other characters don't know, that's fun.
yes,
I
yeah,
like that. Yeah, I like that idea. We'd normally talk about covers next, but I'm going to come back to covers, because we've just been talking about advertising and marketing. So when you finished your book, obviously you are an expert in your field of advertising and marketing. Did you find when it came to promoting your book, did you find it quite different? And how did you approach it
yeah.
initially, and how are you approaching it now?
So the funny thing is like I've worked in advertising and marketing for over 20 years,
Mm.
and there are things that you tell a client to do, um, the best ways of advertising, and putting something out there that I didn't do for my first book initially. So um, I launched Bastard cold. So I was so excited about getting it out there that I hadn't I hadn't promoted it. I hadn't said this book is coming. It was suddenly out there. And then I was like, oh my goodness, now I need to promote it.
Yes.
Um, but that was still fun. That's the fun part. For me, I'm less, there is a big, there's a big trend at the moment for authors to be in front of video and cameras and stuff, and putting stuff out on TikTok and Instagram and other channels, which, to be fair, I've I've had to do and I've done, just to kind of tell people here I am as an author. Um, but the most effective way for getting sales in is always going to be advertising and marketing. Like, book is no different to any other product. So Um, if you have a product and you don't tell anyone about it, no one will know it's there to buy it.
No.
So you do have to tell people about it. And unfortunately, the best way to do that is through paid advertising,
Right.
um, because it specifically targets or goes out to people who are looking to buy. I mean, if it wasn't effective, we wouldn't you wouldn't see posters or out as you walked, you wouldn't see adverts on TV, you wouldn't see the adverts pop up on when you're scrolling through. The
Right.
reason why they're there is because they are effective.
Right.
Um, and from that point on, so that was my comfort zone, even though I hadn't done it before. The advantage that I have, and I completely understand that not every author has this, is that I'm more than capable of creating my own adverts, um, and and coming up with the words to help promote the book and actually putting them together in Photoshop, and then knowing what I then need to do
Right.
um, with the platform that I'm advertising on.
Yeah.
Um,
Which paid adverts do? Because I tried Facebook Marketplace, Facebook advertising with one thing, um, and it was interesting. But it with Facebook, it's they will eat your entire budget. So I was doing £5 a day, I think, for a couple of weeks. Um, but the good thing that I found about Facebook was that people can comment. So it's a normal
yes.
sort of post, but people can comment on it. So you get direct interaction with potential readers. With Amazon, you don't find out who is clicking on your adverts, but it tells you where they're from. So which page your sponsored advert arrived on. And I know I've sold this one, Oh Henry, a dog detective, from somebody who was looking for a lawnmower instruction manual. Now, in my keywords, I'm naturally not going to include lawnmower instruction manual as a keyword, but it's always interesting to see, looking at the reports, um, where people have found it, so you know what's working and what isn't working. But it's that's a sort of almost a full-time job in itself, looking at the reports every day, which I haven't done in too long, and then seeing what's working and what isn't working. And new books are coming out that you can then put your sponsored thing on. So
So,
on.
um, so ironically, as my book's on Amazon, obviously, I'm not allowed to advertise Bastard on Amazon,
Okay,
um,
because of the
because
title.
because of the title.
Yeah.
So it doesn't allow me to. So Amazon ads was never, I did try, but it wasn't an option for
Mm,
me. So all of my advertising has been via Facebook. And you're right, and it has been effective.
mm,
Um, so I continuously advertise, and I have a small budget. I have a budget of £7.50 per day, which predominantly goes to the UK, and I do a little bit to the US, which isn't, again, these are small numbers. I don't know if you've heard of Stephen Aitchison.
I haven't.
So
No.
Stephen Aitchison is a self-published author,
Okay.
um, and his books, The Witches of Scotland, he does fantasy and romancy books.
Oh,
He has been hugely successful. So
okay.
he makes um, five figures a month
Right.
off his books, and he has a really good TikTok channel where he talks about how he's done that,
Right.
and he puts in, and admittedly he's at the stage now, he puts a lot, thousands of pounds into advertising. He makes he makes more than that back every single month. He makes thousands of pounds back.
Mm,
Um, but the principle, whether it's big or small, works the same. So you kind of mentioned you did 2 weeks of Facebook advertising.
mm.
That's never enough to
No.
know
No.
whether they're being effective or not. They have to kind of go for a much longer periods of time, and then you can start to tweak your adverts based on what your cost per click is, whether they're clicking on your landing page.
Sure.
Um, so I tend to change up my adverts I keep them going continuously, and then I change the visuals, or particularly if I'm doing a Kindle Countdown deal, or if I've got another book launching like I've had recently,
Mm,
I change them up every few weeks.
right.
But like you said, that what the good thing about Facebook advertising is that people do comment on them,
Yeah.
and um, It could be a bad thing if someone comments something nasty, but if they did, you have the ability to hide that if you so wish.
Yeah.
Um, that person who posted it still gets to see it, and their friends still get to see it, but no one else does.
Right.
But in the main, like all the comments are absolutely lovely, and the more you interact with them,
Mm,
the further your ad gets pushed out.
okay.
Um, and also you start to get people who are invested in you.
Yeah.
Um, so it's always worth responding to a comment that you might get. Um, but they are particularly effective because you can target your audience. You don't want to go too niche, because sometimes you don't know, like you said, like the person who was who clicked off your book from from your advert from a lawn mowing
Yeah.
manual.
Yeah.
You just don't know. But having the advertising is a far more effective way, and at least a quicker way to get your book to readers
Yeah.
than posting up on Instagram and or TikTok
Yep.
or trying to build an audience that way.
That's the thing. I'm in, I think it's 500 and something, nearly 600 book related Facebook groups. And I'm still getting invited, Facebook shows me other groups I could join. But when you go on them and you think, great, there are 31,000 people in this group, 31,000 people are going to see my post about my book. And of course, it's up there for seconds before somebody else then posts and
But
so on,
something
and it
else, yeah.
drops down. Um, but so many, 99.9% of people are going, I have this book, please go and buy my book.
Yeah.
And it's a sea of,
Well, the reason again why it's kind of meant like 2 weeks isn't enough is because again, when people often don't kind of put themselves in the shoes of buyer, or just in your own experience, how often you need to see something
yes.
before you actually decide to buy.
Mm.
And if you have your adverts running continuously, that person might see your ad three, four, five, six, and it might only be on the seventh or eighth time that they see
I've
your
heard
ad that they
seven.
decide, right, now I will buy
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
Whereas if they see it once, they might think, oh yeah, I'm interested in that,
Yeah.
and then life takes over, and then might see it again and go, oh yeah, yeah, no, I must remember, and
Yeah.
then life takes over. So that's why kind of
Yeah.
continuing.
Well, this was for a timed project, so it was just something I was running for a couple of weeks, and then that was it. Thereafter, it wasn't for a book, but it's post Spain. I have I'm going to go back and go through my adverts and relaunch and do book tours, blog tours, get those organised and so on. But
I
it's
have I have
a
um
job.
I've done it so just for a short period of time, they can be effective as well. I've put one up, I put up yesterday that's coming down on Saturday because
Okay.
um, I'm doing a book signing in a local bookstore
Yeah.
where I live, and you often have always the dread of, oh, what if no one comes? Um, and it's the same thing. You kind of have to tell people about it, which I can do on my own Facebook group, but then I'm just telling my friends who are scattered all over the country or over the world. So
Yeah.
I decided to target Woking, where I live,
Okay.
and a 10-mile radius of Woking, and just put up a post of, right, I'm going to be signing books here at
Yeah.
this event,
Okay.
and people have started to like it. So I mean, I can only hope that those people will
They'll
then
turn up.
will then kind of turn up. But I
Yeah.
mean, either way, they wouldn't have necessarily known that this was going to happen unless I told them.
Yeah. Oh no, that's fantastic. Because also, if you're meeting local people, they'll know that you exist in their area, and then when they see something else from you in X amount of time, they'll go, "Oh yes, I remember. I couldn't go
There's
to
always a
this."
little bit of pride as well people have with they want people in their area to do well.
Yes. No,
It's always a bit
exactly.
of
Exactly. So going back to book covers, which we haven't really
yes,
talked about yet, um, given that you are a graphic designer, did you do your own covers? Did you find someone else?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I did my own book covers. It was one of the joys of writing a book was being able to design a book cover. I always wanted to design book covers, going back to when I was a student. Um, and you often have like kind of different ideas of where you're going to end up in the creative world, what you want to do, and it doesn't always work out that way. You kind of fall into where you can to begin with, and then you work your way, and you work your way through to different jobs. Um, I always wanted to be a book cover designer, but actually um, those jobs don't they tend to be freelancers a lot more, and I never had the opportunity. Um, and with this, with my own books, I had the opportunity, and that was like, oh, this is so exciting. But more so, like not more so than writing it, but I like the idea. I always wanted to have a book out there that I designed.
Mm.
Um, but now I have a book out there, or I've seen two books out there. Not only did I design the book covers for,
Yeah,
I wrote as
write
well.
them as well. Wow. So are you tempted because there are so many people, there places like Fiverr and Get Covers, and they're I don't know how they do it for the money, and a lot of them are stock photos. So they probably work so quickly. But there's Get Covers, which is part of, or Mibble Art is part of Get Covers in the Ukraine, and they charge $35. I think 10 for a standard ebook and $35 for ebook and paperback, which you kind of think is crazy. Because even if it takes you half an hour or an hour to do, it's still a skill that should be paid for.
Yeah,
So it's
I
tricky in this
absolutely,
stance.
yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Mm.
I know all sorts of people need to make a living one way or another, and I know that authors, and particularly self-published authors, may not have the means in which to go and employ someone or pay someone uh, the kind of right amount. I say the right amount because, like you said, I think it should be based on someone's time and their ability.
Absolutely.
Um, and they should be rewarded for it. I would never do that. I would never design a cover for anyone for £50, £100, let alone 10 or whatever. Um,
Yes.
I think any creative who's had, I get when people are starting out, they need to build a portfolio.
Mm.
I think any creative who's then worked over the years and proved and they're, successful in one way or another,
Mm.
they shouldn't have to sell their services for so little.
Yeah.
And but it's the same with anything though. You can buy cheaper, it doesn't mean that you're getting quality as well. And again, there's quite a dialogue going on around AI at the moment, and within my industry, it's had quite a big impact. And obviously, and then people distinguish between using AI for writing, which is wrong because people are just putting
Exactly.
up
Yeah.
stuff very quickly.
Yeah.
Um,
No publisher or agent that I've come across will accept anybody who's used AI to actually write the book.
no, because and they shouldn't. But
No.
then people using AI to create their own book covers,
Mm.
and again, I can see why if they're if they don't have the budget to do it otherwise, but it kind of grates on me because effectively what AI does, it takes what originality that people, it takes the work that people have created themselves, original creations,
Yes.
and it just takes from them to create something else.
Yes.
And interestingly, I saw someone post up their cover recently, said, I've just done this cover. What do you think? Like looking for responses back. And you could tell it was AI, as you can with certain books. And then there were a fair few people, and some people may not even notice, but there are a fair few people who said, "Oh yeah, like it looks great," and other people were saying, "Yes, but it looks the same as this book, or it looks the same as this stuff that I generated for my book." And they started to post them up, and it's you're kind of taken from it's using the same resources to kind of create very similar covers, and there's no originality now. And I also get as well with genres, they all follow a pattern. So whether it be fantasy or children's crime thrillers, they all follow a similar pattern. They all look relatively similar,
Because
and
it's
you're
reader expectation, isn't it?
yes, yeah, and you're told that that's what readers are looking for, that.
Yeah.
but I mean, I have a book on, I have a creative book on book covers because I love book covers. And the ones that stand out for me are the ones that have tried something just a little bit different. And I love seeing, oh, do you know what? That's really clever. That's
Yeah,
a clever book cover. And again, like for children's books and stuff, it should be stuff that's gonna attract a child and look fun.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and
It's,
yeah, so I'm very much, I love designing book covers. I love the fact that I get to do it now for my own books.
mm.
Um,
Have you got
and
them there? Can you show us both of them?
yeah, I can. So I can't, I haven't got my view up. So this is
That's okay. Yep, that's fine. Yep, perfect.
that's um
Yep, that's
that's
the first one.
Bastard. And then
Yep.
Karma follows
Yeah,
um the same
great.
uh premise. And they are slightly different from normal kind of crime thrillers, but they're a bit more hard boiled. And um I wanted them to shout out in a different way.
Mm,
Um, Still part of the genre, but to be kind of memorable.
sure. Well, but they're hard hitting one words, aren't they? So
Yes.
you're certainly memorable. Absolutely. So how far are you through book three? Is it you're in the writing process or
So
said
I
you're in
am
between earlier on?
I'm in between, yes, because
Yeah.
I unlike Bastard, which I launched cold, I put Karma up for pre-sale,
Okay.
pre-order, sorry. So I had
Yeah.
about between 5 and 6 weeks. And it's coming out tomorrow.
Oh,
So
very
I've used these last few weeks in which to promote and do events and do create adverts and it's kind of a different kind of, I'm in a different mind space to the writing one
mm,
at the moment. I am about before I before I finish book three, before I start book three, um, I have quite a few characters in both the books that are minor characters that kind of come in and then go out in different
right,
ways.
right.
Um, and they're quite quirky and interesting. And I want to write a little novella based on some of these characters, just
Okay.
little short stories
Yeah,
first, before I then finish book three, which will be the end of,
right.
my intention is that that's the end of
The trilogy.
that series. Yeah.
Mm, okay. Yeah, short stories and novellas are a great idea because people like to have something to try. And if you're looking to build a newsletter, then I know people use the shorter version, either a prequel or a spin-off. This is as you're doing. You meet this character, but here's more about them as the newsletter reader magnet, which then
Yeah.
ultimately will help your sales thereafter. Um, but I found out something quite interesting recently that some people some readers wait until there are three in a series before
Yeah.
they buy the series. And they say that nothing sells your last book like your next one. So
Yes.
how long has it taken you to write each book so far? And do you think you'll get, because you've 1,000 words to 1,500 words is good every day when you're writing is good going. So how long did it take you to write book one and then book two, and how long have you
Um,
given yourself to write book three?
so book three, I intend for it to come out this time next year.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but I wrote Bastard in 3 months.
Hmm.
And I wrote Karma in four.
Okay.
Oh, that period of time. So they're both around. They're just over 70 odd thousand words. Um,
Just
each book.
about the norm.
Yeah, and so but yeah, it took that long. I mean, like I said, I was quite disciplined
Mm.
um to write it and for it to come out. So yeah, and it wasn't a story that I'd been hanging around for years and years like some authors have, which is great when they finally get to do it, because I've been working on other writing projects. Um, this was something that came to me, and the reason why I wanted to write it as a novel when I woke up the next day is like, "Do you know what? I'm going to write this as a novel, not as a script," is because the TV and film world is incredibly, incredibly slow. And um, we've had a project which um, is a book series of books that we've adapted um, in the fantasy genre,
Mm.
um, and it's taken years and years to kind of get to a point where we might almost be going into production, fingers crossed.
Okay.
Um, but it's taken years, and I wanted, and it has so many other people involved, and it has, and any one small thing can happen, and it sets you back
Mm.
for a year or a year and a half or several months. And I just wanted to have a story that I had control of, that I was in control of when it finished, and I was in control of how it came out and when it came out, which
Yeah.
is why I chose self-publishing again over trying to get agented and going for a publisher, because again, I didn't want all of the outside involvement. I was thinking, you know
Mm.
what, I have a good story to tell. I want to tell it
It down.
and I want to put it
Yeah,
out there.
absolutely. And do you find having a visual background and alongside, do you picture as you're writing? Do you picture the scenes?
Yes, yes, I do. There are some people, I know lots of people are very different, but if anyone's describing something to me, I'm seeing it in images.
Mm.
Um, when I'm walking around and I'm writing, it's kind of visual writing,
Mm.
um, as it were. So I can picture them. I can picture what's happening. I can picture the interaction. I can picture the body movements. Um, and again, I'm not overly descriptive with things visually when I write,
Mm.
because then I'm my intention is that the dialogue is that visual guide, essentially. So not that you're describing what's happening, but you're describing intent. So if I like what I'm saying to you, and you could start to picture straight away, all right, this person's going to do this or move like this,
Sure.
or that's how they're delivering the line.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it is. I am a visual thinker in that respect, or visualizer,
Do you have
visual
any
visual.
do you have any actors in mind for your if and when your books are become to the screen, big or small? Do you have any actors in mind, or would you rather leave it that the reader imagines their own?
I like the reader imagining their own. I know from um my own point of view, when I'm reading books,
Mm.
you're like I said, I think visually, so I'm reading it and creating I'm creating images, I'm creating people.
Yeah.
Um if I'm reading the books of Harry Potter, for instance, I read all those books
Mm.
before, like well, I read the books that were out before the films came out. But
Yeah.
then if you ever reread anything again,
You've got
once it's
them
already
in
been turned
your
into, you
mind.
have those people kind of,
Yes.
they're suddenly those people.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones is a good example as well, which I thought was incredibly well cast to what I kind of imagine people to be, but they forever become that character. You
Yeah.
can't separate them in my mind. I can't separate them anymore.
No.
Um, so rather than have, I don't intentionally have actors in mind when I'm writing. I do have people in mind. And you know, they're often not actors. Um, when you're writing about a particular character, you might have like qualities from people that you know come across. Um, I recently did a we did one of our talks with you and Phil about audiobooks,
Audiobooks, yeah.
and I mentioned that. So my audiobook was read by an actor called Mike Dickman, who I knew previously to write in the book, and his voice was always the narrator's voice.
Mm.
So that was like the always intended for Mike. And luckily he offered to do it. Always intended for Mike to be the voice of the narrator. Um, and then ended up having to do obviously having to do all the other voices, but
No.
he was in mind when I was writing it. Um, and that's how that happened. And you kind of, but interestingly, I kind of start to build up characters. Um, I don't think of actors. I think of they just become people.
Sure. Yeah, no, exactly. And what do you do when you're not? Because you sound so busy. What do you do when you're? What do you do for pleasure? For other pleasure when you're not
Other pleasure.
writing
So
writing related activities?
So this isn't, I mean, this is obviously very connected, and I don't know whether it's the same with you, but when I'm writing, I really struggle to read other
Right.
books,
Hmm.
and I don't enjoy it so much. So now I'm in between writing at the moment. I'm absolutely loving reading again.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I've always read, I always have books with me whenever I commuted, whenever I like traveled. Before pre-Kindle, I used to have two or three books in my bag on just because I so dreaded the idea of finishing one and not being able to go on to the next. So
Yes.
reading has been a big thing for me. But I enjoy playing football. I still play football,
Yeah.
even though I'm approaching my
Right.
50th year. And so I play on Wednesday evening. So I played last night. Um, I coach. I coach my youngest son's football team
Oh, I love
as
them.
well. So involved in that way.
Mm.
Um,
And does your
I,
brain still wear when there's a break? Do your characters come back to you, or you're in the zone, you're in the football zone?
no, I so as a creative, I've always and I've so for the teams that I've built up and people I've mentored and stuff,
Mm.
I think if when you're in the creative world, everything is an experience or can be an influence. I always reckon part of the reason why I love walking is because stuff happens. Not all the time, but you kind of see things, you notice things. Um, Going to football matches, you'll notice things. Watching football, coaching, and you have characters. They're always characters wherever you go. Wherever there are people, there are characters,
Yeah.
and that's why it's important that like I think the people should not be just in front of their computer inside. And I'm fortunate in the job that I do that I can I can wander around. I can do all of this. But yeah, whenever I'm doing anything and I see something interesting, it could even be like kind of going to my son's school, like kind of meeting teachers or like anything. You meet people
Yeah.
and there are certain characteristics where you think, oh, I remember that because
Yeah. No, exactly.
um that might make a good character. Or even
Yes.
so within Bastard, there are certain scenes in there that over the course of because I wrote in such a short period of time, there are things that I attended, or things that happened. So um, one of the quirks of Bastard is that every single chapter um, has the title has some kind of bastard. So for instance, let me pull up. Chapter 20 is Angry Bastard.
Right.
Chapter 19 is Double Crossing
Yeah.
Bastard,
Okay.
Devious Bastard. So they all has a theme.
Mm.
Um,
So that
and
hints at the chapter to come.
it hints at the chapter to come.
Yeah.
Um, Funnily enough, so every single chapter is a bastard,
Right.
and they're all short chapters, and there are 46 chapters. I asked my wife just to pick a number between 1 and 46,
Right.
and she picked that number, and it was
Yeah.
the only, and she picked number 28, and it was the only chapter that wasn't some kind of bastard, and that chapter was called bitch. And
Right.
um, but things happened, and so for instance, I pulled my hamstring playing football whilst writing the book, and I wrote that into the book. Um, and the chapter is called Bastard Hamstring, and and it's just because it just kind of it happened to fit in, and it happened to fit in. The next day, I had to go into London because I had a meeting,
Right.
and it was so painful walking in. And I had a moment where I could sit down and write, and I was like really angry, and I
Yeah.
wrote this. I wrote
It's
it,
a good
and
emotion to have when you're writing. No, I say life is fiction fodder because
yeah.
there'll be somebody walking in a certain way. I know when I get to crossroads, I'm always, not crossroads crossings. I'm always looking at how they dress, how they walk, whether they're fiddling with something in a hair or something. And yet subconsciously, you know that they'll end up in certain things if you need somebody who walks in a certain way. Oh yes, actually that was. Even though I have a terrible memory and I don't write it down, I know that it's all fiction fodder at some point. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's been
We'll
fun.
see you soon. You've done a couple of panels and can always contribute wonderfully to whatever topic we throw at you. So it's brilliant. Thank you so much. And we'll see you in person in October, which I'm looking forward to.
Yes.
Not
Yeah,
wishing
me
my
too.
time away, but we've got, as of the 7th of May, we've got 15, hopefully soon to be 16. I'm just waiting on another one. 16 out of 20 authors confirmed already, which is brilliant. All right. Thank you, Damiano. And we'll see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.